Yes, and we are live on KEXP. Thank you for being here. My name is Larry Mizell Jr. live in the KEXP studios right now. Fish Narc got a great new album out on K Records, Frog Song. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I know you got some music for us. Let's get into it.
We do. You ready, Joco?
Grip the wheel, place your hands at 10 and 2. Ain't no time to waste, girl, push that pedal down. And this is a small town, there's not much going on. You cannot get restless too. Don't look at me with skyscrapers in your eyes, 'cause it eats me up inside. I won't deny, I want you to take me for a ride. Riding shotgun, baby, we could have fun. Scoot me in your old car, take me back, take me back, take me back, take me
Fish Narc right there. Boxy Volvo live on KEXP. My Ceiling, Fish Narc, live on KEXP.
New band, old band.
Upside down.
That was Opposites from Fish Narc from the 2023 release Opposites. You heard Old Band, Mycelium, Boxy, Volvo from the new record, Frog Song. Thank you for being here.
Man, thank you so much, Larry.
Ben, it's good to see you, man.
You too.
Yo, I used to see you on the block all the time.
Swear to God.
Yeah.
I was just at that bar that they turned Speckled and Drake into recently, and I was like, yo, I just
Donna's.
DJ'd here
That's right.
like 10 years ago with Larry.
That's right. Shout out to Donna's. Man, the last decade plus 12 years, you've had an incredibly prolific, diverse adventure in music. And now you've arrived at this new album. It's out on K Records. I know as a kid that came up in the DIY scene here in town, like being on K Records and releasing a record on that. I mean, how do you feel about that?
I wanted the K Shield on my record since I was like 16, dude.
Yeah.
It was so exciting to see that when Emma and I did the layout for the record, and just putting the K Shield on there, it just feels amazing, you know. DIY Washington music, it has a lot of flow to it, and as both of us are a real testament to, you can cross all kinds of boundaries when you're coming up in that community or series of communities or whatever. But the coolest thing about working with K was he really understood the background I had as a rocker, but also as a rap producer, and he really quickly was, you know, talking to me on the same level about the SoundCloud movement being a folk movement and a singer-songwriter paradigm, and I just felt like it was really cool. We understood each other.
I love that, and I love seeing K's really kind of been on it for a minute and tracking what's been going on in ways that maybe a lot of the contemporaries have been slower to.
Absolutely.
Frog Song, man, I feel like this is like your most accomplished work. What were kind of the origins of this record and this suite of music?
Man, thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. Frog Song really came about because if you listen to my first 3 records as like a singer-songwriter, kind of like phasing a little bit out of producing records for other people, a lot of them are, I mean, most of the songs are various shades of alt rock and indie, but the way they were recorded was kind of the way that I had learned from being an engineer and a producer of underground rap.
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of that stuff punching in bars, you know, piece by piece, and they kind of overlap sometimes. Some of the old songs are really hard to do live because the breath control, I just don't have it, and you'd have to be Andre 3000 to do some of that stuff. You know?
Right.
So I had learned so much from being an engineer doing rap music, but this one I kind of was like, I have to, in order to perform these in the format that we're doing, I have to sit down, write the lyrics with the guitar in my hand, make sure I can breathe while they're coming out, and not just like, you know, when I was first making solo records, it was like when TJX6 and Capture Quan were coming out, and I was really inspired by the punch-in bars.
Absolutely.
It was so hard to do that. So it's like, I got to come around and write these more folk style.
Right.
So that was kind of the stylistic origin. We'd done this big tour with Lil Tracy, and it was just so much fun. And
shout out to Tracy.
Yeah, shout out Tracy.
Yeah.
My bro forever. I had Ava Smith from the band Cage Roll. That's actually how I met Joco, because he was playing drums in the Cage Roll band. I have to shout her out because she was just a big part of Frog Song coming together, produced and mixed it, and inspired me. She just is such an amazing songwriter, and I'd listened to this Cage World record, Printed on the Soul, and I was like, well, I don't know, I had to go harder.
Right on. No, I love it, and I appreciate this. You kind of broke down your process, because I was hoping you would speak to how your process has evolved from Hausu, what was that, 2013, 14? Speaking of old band, through Thrax House, Goth Boy Click, and now this latest. I mean, I imagine the way that you've put together music has evolved in all sorts of ways.
I was just gonna say Thrax House. I'm still Thrax House.
All day.
I'm still Goth Boy Click, but Thrax House. Shout out Thrax House. Anybody in Seattle listening, if you're Thrax House, this is all for you. I feel like, you know, part of the fluidity of it came from the lessons I learned in Thrax House, which was first and foremost a based movement in the classical Lil B meaning of the word.
Thank you for saying that. The word based has been misappropriated by bad actors,
by people who don't know what it means.
Shout to the bass god all day.
Shout out to the bass god. Thank you, Lil B. But I learned so much from that. You know, honestly, I was just so captivated by underground rap at the time and disillusioned with, you know, DIY indie rock and stuff too. And Thrax House was the real DIY, and the Ghost Ship fire had just happened, and the like indie rock DIY spaces were really suffering at that time. And you know, gentrification was squeezing the city really hard, and the spaces were gone. So Thrax House was like this light in the tunnel for me as somebody who grew up thinking that was never going to go away childishly. And then seeing it go away, Thrax House was amazing because Knecht and Knecht invited me into the crew because I was a rocker, and I was just a fan of underground rap, but I didn't think I had a place in that world. I was just a fan. And they were like, no, you've got to be in Thrax House. And the way I started making beats even was just because they were like, oh, you have a really different way of making music than us. So here's, it was actually Tracy, who was kind of showing me how to fit my music to beats and stuff like that. But it evolved a lot. And, with Gothboy Click, the style of beat that I became known for was based on being a rock guitar player and Seattle sound. I got a compilation from the EMP when I was like 10 called Wild and Woolly. Okay. And it was like a Washington rock compilation that influenced me a lot. And part of why I was so into local music, I think, because I didn't have much of an identity and I could fixate on that. So making songs like that, I was reflecting on my different, years of work in DIY and underground music and trying to make beats and make stuff that people wanted to rap on that also reflected, for example, like the Goth Angel Center records I did with Peep, the guitar sound on there is most influenced by like Unwound and Gun Outfit, Broken Water and stuff like that. Bands that some people know Unwound a lot more now, but Gun Outfit and Broken Water are kind of lesser known bands from Olympia. Yeah. And I think those are my most listened to rap productions, and I was really trying to show where I came from on that. And then full circle, like I was saying earlier, trying to write rock songs again, I was doing it as a SoundCloud rapper.
Yeah.
And Frog Song kind of just brings all that back together.
It feels like a homecoming. It feels like full circle, and I mean, you just spoke to it. I've always been fascinated by the insight you must have that I don't see a lot of people having from being in DIY and indie rock spaces into DIY and indie rap spaces, and seeing a huge growth and synthesis of these things in the music you've brought, and bringing that sound and that. You're talking about Unwound into those little Peep records, and R.I.P. Peep, of course.
Rest in peace.
I feel like there's probably a lot of people who love that sound, love those records, don't associate that music with any of it. You know what I mean? But I always felt like you're bringing real cred and real history and real studied love of the craft to these records.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry.
Absolutely.
That's a really nice thing to say, and I really appreciate it.
Well,
it's nice to be acknowledged for that.
Yeah, man, absolutely. How did you kind of get started in music in general? Where did your passion for it come from? I mean, you talked about that compilation. Did somebody put the guitar in your hand? What happened?
Well, I wanted to be a drummer, and that was too loud for my parents. And then I thought I wanted to play bass, which honestly, tiny gripe, I love my parents. They're the best. Very lucky to have my parents. But they're from the older paradigm, and they're like, well, bass players don't get any respect. You got to play guitar, But honestly, bass is harder to play well, in my opinion. It's just as important or more important, and it's harder to play well. But I wanted to play bass, and then my mom gave me her old classical guitar. I kind of didn't really have any friends, and didn't fit in right, and playing guitar, and this is one of my biggest issues too, but playing guitar, it really gave me something to stand on, and it helped me talk to people and relate to people, and it gave something. It just gave me some confidence. So I started doing that. I got, if you remember DJ No Name from 107.7 The End, he was doing a CD giveaway at Westlake Center in 2003, and I got a copy of Indestructible by Rancid, which is really important. It made me. I was already pretty into punk, and it really made me a punk.
Yeah.
And that identity really carried me through all this stuff. I got to say, like, Washington punk is truly essential to me. But I love DIY stuff. I just felt like it didn't really matter what I was going to see. If I could go to a show at Healthy Times, I was going to go to it. If I could go to a show, I was a Vera kid. I worked at Vera.
That's right.
That's what I was going to do, and it's still what I like to do. I go to shows at Lavoyer. I go to shows at the Crypt. I'll see a house show in Olympia. Whatever's going on, I like to go to it. It's really been that way. And honestly, why I joined Thrax House, because they were just doing real DIY stuff.
Right.
But they were also interested in making money from it too, which I was like, never really thought about before.
Well, that's an interesting dynamic, right? Having a DIY dynamic that isn't kind of fettered by those like punk ethics of like, you can't do this and you can't do that, which is restrictive in all sorts of ways.
It is. When I first was in Thrax House, I couldn't believe that people wore Thrax House merch out to shows. I was like, we can't wear our own merch, dude. What are you guys doing?
Right.
And they were like, what do you mean?
Right, it looks
you
cool.
You have to put a shirt on right now.
Yeah. Right. That's like a very big rule, of course. I'm glad you mentioned Olympia, too, because, I mean, music has brought you to L.A., to New York. Now you're in Ole. How have those scenes kind of shaped, where you've ended up?
And Olympia was always the grail for me as a Seattle kid. There was, it was so concentrated. Like, there was definitely more stuff, overall in Seattle, but the density of it in Olympia was really crazy. I remember I had a band called Hair Jazz before Hausu, which was there weren't as many teen bands back then. I was pretty proud of it, and we ended up moving the band to Olympia. Sam Crystal, who was DJ assistant on the Punk Show here a long time ago, he was the drummer, and we practiced in Olympia because of that. And because of that, we were involved with kind of the Microfest era where like 15 bands would play a house show all at once, and then we'd go see Sex Vid or something that. It's really essential stuff. And I drank the water out of the well, and I thought I was going to go to Evergreen, and I didn't end up going, but it was interesting, I met Emma in New York, and we fell in love, and then we were going to move back to Olympia, or not to Olympia, we were going to move somewhere, I guess, because of the pandemic, and her sister lives in Olympia, so we ended up kind of just settling there again, and it's the scene is definitely aging, and the rent has gone up a lot, which I think impacts. And, Evergreen had that kind of issue with that weird professor.
Right.
I don't know. I'm a little worried about it, but it still is really cool. There's great bands there. There's Physique is like a favorite, and really good friends of mine. Electric Chair is kind of on a break, but they're really sick. Olympia just is like legendary. Beat Happening is one of my favorite bands. It still is. Yeah. Those bands that I mentioned earlier, like Gun Outfit, Broken Water, Sex Vid, Milk Music, Gag. We just went on tour with Gag. Gag's been one of my favorite bands forever. And
right on.
I don't know. I'm really attached to the Olympia scene, the various sounds that come from it. I'm interested in nature, and there's like mushroom species that grow at Evergreen that the only place you'll ever see them outside of the redwoods in California is at Evergreen.
I've heard this before.
There's just some magic there.
Yeah, no question. Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you're there. I'm sure you're helping energize everything. Would you introduce everybody?
Oh yeah, let me introduce the band because they're so essential in this new phase of Fish Narc music. People may know the producer side. The Fish Narc band is really what I'm doing right now. Jans on the drums. He's in Gothboy Click with me. He's one of my best friends and longest running collaborators. He's one of the best producers, beat makers, can play every instrument. I gotta say, shout out Jans. He learned the set in like 1 week.
Right on.
Only a few months ago, and just switched to drums. So got Jans. Emma over there, she's in the band Fantasia from New York, which is an amazing band. They have a record called Ghost Stories that was a couple years old, and they have a new record on the way. Also in Crime Watch, which people may know. And I have Joco, who's the newest addition to the band. Extremely talented, played drums in Cage World, is in Valentina Bludgeoned, Ivy Blue. Am I missing anything? That's it, bro. This fool is extremely talented, and I'm really lucky to have him in the band.
Ben, I love your level of excitement about music, about Washington music, about Indian DIY scenes of all types.
Exactly.
I hope that the enthusiasm you have for that and your history is infectious, and that everybody who's ever related to your music studies and learns from that. And I hope that there's more to come. I know there is. What is next?
Well, we have a bunch of new songs that are demoed, and I think after today, me and Joco are gonna sit down and try to write a couple new ones. We just did a bunch of touring, and Gothboy Click did a bunch of stuff that I was kind of like stage managing. So the rest of the summer, I'm hoping is gonna be chill, time for writing. And we hope to be out on tour in the fall again. It hasn't really materialized yet, but new record gonna be. It'll probably be the top of next year, just by the way things take time.
For sure.
But yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. A fantastic set.
Thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you.
And thanks to the crew.
Most definitely.
Everyone.
Fish Narc, live on KEXP. Remember, you power music like this. You power sessions like this. You power music 24/7. 365, and thank you for it. KEXP.org. Make sure you subscribe that YouTube so you can see when this session drops on YouTube. Thank you again. I'm Larry Mizell Jr. We are live on KEXP, KEXP.org, where the music matters.
Discover new music at listener-powered KEXP.org.